So welcome to the Takeaways Podcast, the platform where we talk to the founders, the investors and the stakeholders who really drive technology in Africa. On today's episode, I'm with Ntuthuko Shezi. He is the founder and the CEO. The CEO stands for Cow Executive Officer of Livestock Wealth. It's a platform where they do what they call crowd farming. He will explain more what that is. And on today's episode, we're going to talk more on the business, on the challenges he has faced along the way, and what growth is going to look like for Livestock Wealth over the next few years. Hi, Ntuthuko. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Ephraim. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to talk to you again. I'm doing well, doing good. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's jump into it, right? The concept of crowd farming. I believe you have a trademark on that. Just share more exactly what that concept is.
Yeah, so crowd farming is essentially a mixture of the words crowdfunding and farming. So it's a mesh and a play on those words. I came up with the concept as far back as 2009, and it was really around, I'm trained as an engineer. My brain is trained to always be solving problems, to say, what's the root cause? How can we change? What needs to be changed? And one of the things that when I was analyzing how best does Africa move forward, it always came back to me that what we knew best was always agriculture. And then there came a time due to our colonial history, etc., where agriculture then became impossible for most of the Africans to do. And also, even when they're able to want to start, they don't have the time. Maybe they're already into other professions outside of farming. They don't have the land to farm, and they don't have the skills to farm. So then crowd farming then helps to say, okay, you don't have land, you don't have time, you don't have skills, but we do have farmers who are already having all these things you don't have. And then we then able to then say, we'll set up a farm such that there is one farm, one manager, one operation, but different owners of assets in that operation. So that's what crowd farming is. And we've piloted it from 2015 we started. 2014 to be exact. Only the business launch was 2015. So yeah, we're going on 12 years full now of the business, which is a milestone on its own.
You've been at it for 12 years, and that's a long time, right? How would you say, the reception to the product has been over the last 12 years?
The reception took stages. First was disbelief. Is this real? Can it really be done? Is there someone that crazy? To acceptance? Okay, let's give it a try. To, yeah, this is working, let's go full. And then it got to a point where it really became big. And I think somehow it became a threat maybe to even other people, because we were able through crowd farming to really be able to transform a whole lot of industries, especially in South Africa. We were able to transform the beef industry. We're able to transform vegetables. Vegetables is a mixed bag there. We'll talk about that later. But I think the most powerful thing we've done was farmland, where there's a farm for sale. Each one of us wouldn't have the money enough to buy the farm. But together, through Livestock Wealth, we're able to create this crowd that says, yep, we'll buy it. And boom. And we've been doing that for 2 years now with excellent results. So where from just one action, we've been able to transform a citrus industry, which was previously very exclusionary, hardly any serious black farmers in it. And now it's not something to be proud about, but we're the biggest black-owned managed exporter of citrus out of South Africa. It's something that we should be clapping hands and saying, yeah, but it's a shame, to be exact, if you think about it, in a country as big as ours, with all the brains we have, that it had to take almost 30 years post-democracy to get there. So in a way, I'm proud of the work we've done. I'm really proud. We've been able to do the impossible.
I'm interested now, in the workflow of how the product really works, right? You have a farmer in rural KZN who has like a few cattle that they would like to sell at a profit. Then you have a young person in Joburg who would want to own cow like a cattle. So tell me how the platform works to be able to connect these two people and to ensure that at the end of the day, both of them, have profit, right? And this doesn't only apply to the cows, right? To also, other product that you have.
It's literally a matchmaking platform. What we're doing, which is saying, here's a farm, got these type of assets, and it's got Y number of assets available, and then here you are as an investor and say, yeah, I want in there, and then that's really how we work. In that we match the city dweller who's got no experience in farming but has got an interest in being part of it. To say, okay, here's a farm, here's a farmer, here's the product, which is the cattle. Yeah, the farmer needs to have at least 100 cows plus. So then they're able to say up to 49 of their cattle they can be able to put on the platform, so that they're not just managing other people's cows, they also got skin in the game. And then there are farms where Livestock Wealth runs the operations themselves as well. So you can then own 1 cow, 2 cows, or 10 cows in that operation. Whatever the farm would be normally doing in terms of its operations, that continues as one operation. And then when it's time for profiting, which is not literally sometimes once a year, at times twice, then you as the owner of one of the cows there, you get to profit at that time that the farmer were to profit if you were farming alone. The short summary of it. So basically, like for example, I'll make an example with the cattle. A cow gets pregnant once a year, then it delivers an offspring, and then when that offspring grows to about 6 or 7 months, it's worth a lot more. In fact, it can be worth as much as half the worth of the mother at 7 months. In fact, that's the most expensive a cow can become when it's just finished milking from its mom, because then the options are endless. So it's sold as a live cow and live weight. So in South Africa these days, a mother could be worth, say, 15,000 rand or 16,000 rand, give or take. But its baby at 7 months would be worth about 8,000 rand, which is literally half the cost of the mom. Now, that 8,000 rand is actually the annual income that the mom produces, because it's like its production. So now what we then do is, as the owner of the cow, you get a portion of that 8,000 rand. So in this case, about 2,000 rand or 2,500 rand. And the balance remains with the farmer for the upkeep of the farm and the mom and all those things. So that's how crowd farming works. So in other words, you own a cow. Over 12 months, it produces an income, and you're getting a portion of that income as your profit.
How much do I initially pay for the cow?
About 21,000 rand. That's the price that if you were to go online now to our app, Livestock Wealth or livestock.com, then you can be a proud owner of a cow as early as today.
I want to jump more into the economics of the business. From the top of my head, I'm seeing that the majority of the capital expenditure could be going to the farmland and also to those farmers to be able to secure the farms, which would then be available for the customers to be able to purchase, right? How have you tried to keep those expenses to, align with the growth of the business?
So what we've done there to minimize most of those costs, Ephraim, is to say the farmer needs to already be farming. So we're not establishing a new farm. We're not buying a new farm and then putting in cattle. And then, so for the livestock option or investment option, we already starting with a plug and play process there, so that we don't have too much in terms of capital expenditure from the buying of the farm. However, with the farmland, especially with the citrus and the export crops, that's when we're then going to buy the entire farm, because already the farm already has the infrastructure, already has the trees, is already producing. So we're not starting from scratch. Rather, it could be revitalizing where maybe there has been some degradation in the past. So with that revitalization, it becomes an easier process to then recover that investment much quicker.
I'm interested, right? At the beginning, who was much harder to convince that this could actually work? Was it the farmer to convince them to list their stock, or was it the investors who, they have an option to be able to take that cash and probably go to the JSE or buy some government bonds, etc., etc. Who was harder to convince?
Initially, it was the consumer who's non-farming. So, but we were able to, through great efforts in marketing and PR engagement, to get them to see that the earth is round. And then we were fortunate that we were able to make people believe that, hey, hang on, farming that used to work in the days of Shaka Zulu can still work today in 2024, 2025. And, people believe, which is great. But what we found was then, as Livestock Wealth, we took on the role of the farmer. So at the start, we couldn't try both models. We, almost like in a video game, you had to have a single player mode where we are the computer as Livestock Wealth, and then the investor will be then investing in the farm that we operate. And then as we grew then to be able to facilitate growth, the biggest farmers which were difficult to convince were the well-to-do farmers, the farmers who are farm. Yeah, the ones who have a bank overdraft, who are planting their maize. Those were the harder farmers to convince to get onto the platform. So those were difficult. And in South Africa, because of our history, the well-to-do farmers are almost exclusively white. They own the land. They have all their things. They've got big machinery, like million rands of machinery on the farms. If they need any funding, it's just a phone call to the bank manager to release another million rand of overdraft, and the bank manager releases a million rand overdraft. Whereas on the other hand, then you've got Black emerging farmers where most development is needed, where most funding is needed. But then there's other barriers in that, there's sometimes a skill barrier, experience barrier, infrastructure barrier, a whole lot more of things that need more government or NGO intervention, where it was really difficult for us to go alone into that environment and be able to make sure that this farmer succeeds and is able to really look after the investment and return a profit. So just because of the nature of South Africa, that is how our challenge is stacked in terms of order of appearance.
I want to speak more to you as an entrepreneur. Prior to Livestock Wealth, I believe you had another startup. What of the lessons that you learned from your previous startup did you bring in to Livestock Wealth to be able to run it for 12 years?
Prior to Livestock Wealth, I was still involved in a company called Scratch Mobile, which is a panel beating business. How it worked and still works was, okay, you have a scratch on your car, and then you want it to be repaired. You don't want to bring your car into a panel beater so that it stays there for like a long time. Simply, you just go to our websites, scratchmobile.co.za, you get in touch with us, you book an appointment, and then we would come to you. We'll come to your house or to your office, fully mobile, to fix your car and paint it. If we need to paint it, we would come with all the toners of paints and a computer and a scale, and we'll mix everything right there in your porch, and then would spray the car, remove the scratch, remove the small dent, and then you pay, and then off we go. So that was the business. Now, the biggest lesson there was being able to start up a business and bootstrap without much funding. I think though that has been the biggest takeaway across my businesses, where you really forced to not swim in excess money. Most businesses today, they compete about how much they've raised in funding, which is important. I don't want to downplay it, that they've raised this round, they've raised billion rand round, or this round or that round. I had never had such luck in my life. I just have always said to just pull myself up with my own boots and just be forced to make the business work, keep the costs very low, keep them lean, do as much as I can, hire the best people who are smart, to not need 10 people where 2 could just be fine. In that way, then one was able to really keep the business costs very lean. I think that's really been in terms of our ability to stay alive. I think that will be the biggest sort of factor that we've been able to exploit.
In terms of the livestock itself and the citrus plants and everything, are you able to share, how many cows and investors you have on the platform and how growth is going?
Our assets under management are in excess of 100 million rand, which is the farmlands, which is the macadamias, which is the cattle. We've been fortunate, I'm sure we're still going to talk about some of the challenges we faced over the last couple of years, so that it brought some downward pressure onto our operations a great deal. But I think the beauty of constantly innovating and being ahead of challenges is like when we, for example, diverted into citrus. Those 2 benefits that we have there. One is the value of the farmland that we bought nearly doubled in value, just because there we are, having bought a farm for about 15 million rand. Now it's easily worth 30, even probably, I would say as far as 40 million rand. So that is the one advantage there. One is able to, in the last 12 years, we've been able to run this experiment of saying, okay, in livestock, what are the levers for growth and for profit? In crops, what are the levers for growth, profit? In fruits, what are the levers for growth and profits? In that way, we've now got this base of knowledge that says, okay, when we are expanding into the rest of the continent, we focus exclusively on these similar traits, and we follow the same formula and just almost press the repeat button. That for us, I think it's it's the beauty, we've been able to establish these railway tracks where we can then be able to plug all sorts of goods trains, passenger trains, and leisure trains, whatever. We can be able to do a whole lot more on the railway tracks we've been able to build.
As with every business, at one point or another, you are going to run into a challenge or a hurdle. So at the beginning of 2024, the company was a source of, like an investigation by the FSCA. And just to sum it up for the listener here, the issue is that the regulator felt like the company, misrepresented its licensing status, right? So I want to hear from you. What was the main source of concern from the FSCA?
The first source of contention was the FSCA believed that if someone buys a cow on our platform, that they are buying a financial product or a regulated entity. That's the assumption that they based the investigation on. That, hang on, your website says invest, so you are doing investments, which is regulated. Because investments, buying imaginary things, which you can't feel and touch. No one has ever seen a share or a bond except for a piece of paper. That was the first premise. Then there was another part. Livestock Wealth has got a group of companies. So there was another company called Livestock Wealth Financial Services, which were registered with the view of being able to provide insurance and other financial services to our farmers, to in future even our investors as well. So that was the essence of Livestock Wealth Financial Services. Obviously, when we have those two companies in the group, we would have the same website. Like, most companies in South Africa, in fact, all the banks, they have the same website for their banking business, for their insurance business, for their property business. There's no rule anywhere that says you must have different websites for different types of entities. Then the regulator said, okay, in their eventual finding, that they said there might be some confusion. So actually we did not break any law there, but they just, I suppose, if you've been digging for 2 years and not finding anything wrong, you at least want to come back with a speck of something small, just so that people don't judge you and say you've been doing nothing. So then they come back and say, okay, because of that, because you may have caused confusion, there's no proof that we caused any confusion, because you may have, we're going to fine you 50,000 Rand for that. So that was the one part. But the biggest part of all was them coming back and saying, no, the cattle and the other assets, where you are buying in actual assets, is not a regulated product, which is something that they knew as well from 2015. We've constantly been approaching them saying, is what we're doing regulated? Do we need registration? And they came back in black and white saying, no, we don't do cows. So I think there was some confusion inside the regulator itself, where maybe one department is not speaking to another, and then we caught in the crossfire there. So that's really how I see that thing have happened there, because we were able to point out to the regulator and say, hey, here's your emails where you said, okay, the cattle's investments are not a regulated product. And we were able to point to them even video recordings where they invited me as a speaker at their conferences, where I was speaking the very same thing I'm speaking to you now about cattle, about this, as far back as 2021, 2022, at their own conferences, at their own FSCA conference, where they were inviting me as a guest speaker. Also to their videos, some of their internal videos where they're praising Livestock Wealth as an innovator in alternative finance. We were able to say, hang on, hey, here's your marketing department. We were there, like, here's this department. This is their poster. It's got your logo there. There's Shez's face in that poster as a keynote speaker in your conference. So how come we didn't know that what he's doing is okay? We laugh about it now. That 2 years, was a horrible time.
I was going to come to that, because January 2024, you probably receive a call on email, and then there's the press release that goes out saying, I'm assuming that there was a warning to the public to say, don't or be careful when you're conducting business with that entity. How did you feel as a founder? I mean, you've been building this thing for 10 years, and just like that, the regulator is telling stakeholders, potential customers, potential investors, to say, don't do business with this person or this entity. How did you feel as a founder then?
It's the most horrific thing. It's almost like someone is trying to burn your house and you are inside and you're trying to save the house. And it was horrendous. One, because you feel ambushed, as if, okay, if that's the case, if that's how you feel, couldn't you at least have give me some warning, allow me to give you my side, maybe to illuminate what maybe a confusion or a fear on the other end. So there was that feeling of being sabotaged. Really, it felt as if someone has it against us, to just demolish all the good work we've built over the years. And building a business is hard. It's even harder than when the very same people who are supposed to provide the guardrails, the very same people that you've been constantly in communication with, then are the ones who are then doing the demolishing, which was sad in that, sadness is always when you are angry and you can't do much about it. So it was really that part where you feel, okay, but we can't go to courts. We don't have the money to fight this in court. We don't have the big lawyers. We don't have R1 million to spend on legal fees. Then you just have to say, okay, let's wait and let the process follow. There's something like they call it a sitting duck, where everyone is just shooting their bullets at your end, and you are there at the corner, you can't really move. So it felt like that, it felt very much like that.
The investigation, like it went on for 2 years. How do you run a business within this period? I mean, I'm imagining that if you're trying to have a conversation with investors or customers, etc., it's just really tough conversations. How do you get through this period?
It was tough. It was almost like going on a date with a girl, but someone wrote on your forehead, I have an STD. That's what it was like. So eventually you stop going on dates, you stay at home, and then you say, okay, let's just maintain, let's reduce costs, let's reduce staff, let's reduce all the other things we can do to keep the ship steady and wait the storm. And wait the storm to subside. It was very much like in the movies when a ship goes into a storm, where you're like, okay, let's throw out some of the cargo so that we can lighten the load. And then some of the cargo was really our best employees. We had to make sure that we trim down costs to be able to have enough oxygen in the tank to ride out the storm. Yeah, so we had good supporters though, like our bankers, Standard Bank. They've always been really a good support, giving us loan funding here just to be able to keep the business going and get that extra oxygen to give us, more runway. So that really helped a great deal. As an entrepreneur as well, I had to make sure that I use the ingenuity to be able to raise funding from whichever other sources we'll be able to find. That was the game plan. Reduce costs where you can, raise funding. Because even raising funding was difficult in much the same way, because everywhere you go, people would first Google. And then when they Google, like, and then what they say, Google doesn't forget.
If there's a lesson that you took away from these 2 years, just one lesson of yourself as an entrepreneur trying to run a business in Mzansi, what's that lesson that you learned from this entire experience?
The most important thing there that I learned is when you start a business, and I'm glad I learned this lesson when I was still very young, is that you gotta be very clear on your mission, on your purpose. Why the hell are you doing what you're doing? For us, it was very clear, and it's still the same, that our job is to end inequality, which we see. We live in South Africa. We live in the most unequal country in the world. I'm sure you've seen the stats where they explain that. Really extreme riches alongside extreme poverty. 2 countries in one. So my personal mission, life purpose, and also which translates into the business purpose, because the business is really me getting other people to believe in the same thing I believe. To say we've got to end inequality, and agriculture is the start where we can cause that change. So for me to continue in the midst of all the challenges and still believe in the mission and not be shaken from it, that's really the one major lesson I would advise on every other entrepreneur. Do not look at what's making money. What's the flavor of the month? If AI is the flavor of the month, or in the past it was Internet of Things or whatever other thing, there's always flavors of the month, So machine learning, before, those buzzwords, almost every 2 years there's a new one. So pick a battle. In this case, pick a mission that is based on something that makes you angry, that you say, I've got to change this and I've got to do everything in my power to change it. And then regardless of what storms come in the way, the mission stays the same, the purpose stays the same. Then that becomes a fuel that takes you through the hard times. So for me, I think that's plus my faith and belief in God, that this is my God-given mission that I need to fulfill. Then that keeps you steady in your path, and you're not gonna be shaken then by whatever anyone throws at your face.
It's been a tough 2 years, but it's behind you now. How does the rebuilding process kind of look like? Where do you start now that the trust is back and you are clean? You basically have a clean bill of health. How are you going to start the rebuilding process in terms of your customers, your investors, etc.?
The rebuilding really starts with the team. I think that initially that's the most part. The people that carry the company, that look after the customers is our team. So the main thing is augment the team and just make sure that I've been stepping to some of our best employees from the past to say, hey, come back, let's go back to the mission, So that's the first part. And then, because, once that is steady, then, and you've got a group of people who believe strongly what we believe, then everything else becomes secondary. So, but we've got over and above that, we're excited that that our citrus for export markets is doing phenomenal well. I think we've found what works, and a business, I always say, is an experiment, an expensive one, where you're finding what works and what doesn't work. So in our business, I think we've found what works now. With what we're doing now is okay, we've got the team, we've got the right products. Now we need to ramp up, so we're gonna be raising more equity as well, just to make sure that we've got enough oxygen in the tank. Then we fly again. Then we're flying to higher heights. I think that's really the game plan going forward.
You mentioned an interesting topic, trying to point out the inequality in South Africa. I think you do try to play a role in kind of trying to plug that, because I imagine a lot of young black professionals in South Africa don't have the means to go out there, buy like a farm and either put cattle in there or crop. Do you think that your mission goes beyond just being a business, but you are also trying to address a social issue?
I agree there that a business must do well, produce profits, but must also do good, in that it has to have an impact that is causing onto the people on this planet. So that's always been my mantra, in that money alone doesn't do the trick, doesn't make us happy. But with the right impact, where we are seeing more farmers enter into the field and succeeding in the field, and we're seeing more people being able to create a nest egg, saving for a rainy day through cattle, through our investments. For us, that's what we are about. Someone is able to say, hey, I was retrenched at work last month. I've got 2 cows there with you guys. I will need to withdraw my investment in those 2 cows so that I can keep the lights on while I search for a new job. That's the impact, that's what we want. Because then if it went for those cows, that money would have been spent maybe on a TV set or some other thing. So for us, that's really the stuff that makes us wake up in the morning and feel like we are changing the world.
If you look back in hindsight, I mean, it's always easy to look back in hindsight, but if you look back, what do you think you would have done a bit differently?
I try to live my life without any regret. I always look and say, okay, this happened. Where is the bright side? Had the investigation not happened, then there are people who would never have known about us, and then now they do. And then also, the investigation not happened, we wouldn't have had to produce every transaction of ours since birth to the FSCA, where they went through a fine-tooth comb to check. So in a way, they've actually validated our business, that these are good guys. So in a way, yes, it took a knock on in terms of time, but we are the only business that can put a sticker on our logo saying FSCA tried and tested. I don't think there's any other one who can proven to be true. So I think we're the only ones.
To young founders who are going to listen to this and they see you as a motivation, what can you share to them about being able to get through really tough times in your entrepreneurship journey?
I would say to young founders, you gotta know what you're doing. If you're saying I'm starting a business, if you say I'm opening a startup just know what you're doing. Don't just pick a flavor of the month and go in there hoping to make a quick buck. Really, if you're picking a business, just be ready that this is going to be one thing you do for the rest of your life, if need be, and be prepared for that. Don't think, oh, I'll start this business 3 years, I'll sell it for Y, and then I'll retire to Italy or wherever. It is just just have a long-term view, and be ready to say, this is going to be a long-term thing.
We have, like a lot of investors who tune into our shows. What's the message that you can give to them about where the business is going next and how they can be a part of the journey?
To our investors, both current, mostly current, just thank you for just sticking with us and being part of the mission. To prospective ones, the main thing about why we're here on earth is saying, okay, what mission are we fulfilling? And this is one place where we know what we are about. And I think we are halfway successful at our mission of saying, okay, agriculture is a growth business. Everyone needs to eat at least twice a day or once at a minimum. And it's a growth industry where there is a need for the world to eat. And we've been able to prove that works. But more importantly, we're creating impact in terms of stories of work we've done, the farms we've been able to build, in terms of macadamia, what we've been able to achieve, the impact we've created. Those are evident despite everything else. The stuff we've done in the citrus, the 15 million rand of citrus we exported last year, all of those things, those are good stories that we want you to be part of, and it's as simple as becoming one of us. And then you can be able to tell the story that I'm part of that, or I was part of that. And then so that you don't say in 10 years time that I wish I'd been part of that then, so that's really the few words we'd have for our prospective investors that we are tried and tested.
That's a closing question, right? In terms of technology in agriculture, how do you see it being a part of, a sector that's traditionally not a very tech-savvy sector? How do you see platforms like your Livestock Wealth continue playing that role in driving the growth of agriculture in South Africa?
I think the biggest part of technology that we've done is someone in New York or in Paris can own a macadamia tree or a citrus tree in Musina, South Africa. That's the power of technology there. We've been able to match first world to third world, US dollar to rand. I think that's the most powerful start. And then the rest of the other things can then follow straight from there, which is all your Internet of Things, your drones, your this, your that. Because if there's no funding, you can dream about drones the whole day, but you won't be able to afford to use them at the farm, or tertiometers, or Internet of Things, or connected car, or connected this. All of those will be a pipe dream unless there's funding flowing in to power the agriculture, and unless there's export markets, which is what we've been able to do as well for whatever is being produced. So that's the beauty of our work, and I'm particularly proud of that.
What's next for you after this? Are you going to go, on holiday? Are you going to write a book about the experience?
Yeah. I'm busy with the book. I think a book is a good way of reflection. I'm already on page 78, so I just need to get to page 250, then we should be fine.
Am I going to get like a first draft to have a look before it goes through the printers?
Yeah, you're going to be my reviewer, man.
Yeah. All right, Ntuthuko, man, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I mean, it's been a pleasure seeing you and Livestock Wealth go through the growth, the truth and blood truths of being, like an entrepreneur. And you are still here, so that counts for something, right? That means that you've been able to persevere. And I'm sure that your, investors and your team, I'm really glad that this whole experience has left the company still standing, right? It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you, Ephraim. I really value you and your contribution. I remember when those news came out, I think your article was one of the most balanced ones that I've ever read, which we appreciated,